Hi viewers, warm greetings from Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University. Today we bring you a video lecture on pay, components, principles and pay commissions. Pay is a very important phenomena in human resource management. As we say, Dhanamulam idam jagat, every employee joins an organization more or less for the pay that it brings in. These days seldom we find people who are willing to work free for the organization. That there is often the case they are not working that much as for which they are paid. There can be such cases, but nobody is there to work free for public organizations. So, therefore, payment or salary is very important, and often people take up jobs. People are attracted to jobs based on the pay the job gets in. So, therefore, this is a very important thing. Pay sustains the motivation of the individual. Pay will create an authority for the organization or the boss. The boss can tell the subordinate that, well, you are paid and you have to do this work. So, therefore, pay is a very important source of work also. In this video lecture, we see what is pay, what are the conceptual aspects of pay, and what are the components of pay. So, pay is not there were times when pay was just a single amount or the some other thing that was paid to an individual, but today as years progressed, there are so many components of pay. We have to be aware of these things. Thirdly, we have to see what are the principles of pay. So, on what basis the employees have to be paid. So, there are different bases of paying, and these are known as the principles of pay. Finally, in India we have pay commissions. Pay commissions are the bodies organized by the government of India or the state governments to objectively recommend the pay scales, emoluments, various entitlements, working conditions and other things relevant for government employees, and these pay commissions are appointed periodically. These are the three things that we will have to see. Now, coming to the conceptual aspects, there are some words which are also used along with pay. One important thing, earlier times this was known as salary. Even now in many government organizations, there is a statement, we say salary statement. Salary statement mentions what is the basic pay, what are the allowances, what is the total amount and all that. We are still using the words salary. So, salary is another word, wage is one more word. Now, coming to wage and salary, salary is considered to be the amount paid to white collared employees. Wage is something paid to blue collared employees. Let me just explain these terms. White collared employees are office employees, executive employees, whereas blue collared employees are employees who are working in industries and other than white collar employees. So, the word wage is used for the manual employees or the people who are working in lower level jobs, and salary is used for higher level jobs. But these things have now replaced. These are replaced by pay is one word that is used, and another word that is used is remuneration, and one more word that is these days used is compensation. So, this is a modern vocabulary that is being used in the private sector, corporate sector. In multinational corporations, they use the term compensation rather than pay or salary. Interestingly, the word salary comes from salarium, which the Roman soldiers, salarium means it related to salt. So, how this it is very interesting to know that the word has origins in the Roman army, where the soldiers were paid in salt. Salt was a very precious commodity, like something like gold for us. Those days it was salt was very rare commodity, and every employee was paid in terms of salt only. So, hence the name salary. But now these are all related words. Let us use them more or less simultaneously. Next important thing is pay. What are the components of pay? It is not that employee gets paid some lump sum amount towards salary, unless somebody is a regular, somebody is a contractual employee. For contractual employees, there may be lump sum amount, there is no other thing. But for all regular cadre employees, there are various components of pay. The first component of pay is known as the basic salary or basic pay. The second component is allowances. The third component is benefits. The fourth component is perquisites or perks. So, thus we have four different components of pay. Basic pay means which is the basis for all other payments. An employee may get DA, an employee may get TA, an employee may get HRA. So, to pay this, the basis is basic pay. So, if you have higher basic pay, you get these allowances higher. If you have lower basic pay, you get these allowances lower. So, since it forms the basis for all other allowances, it is known as basic pay. This basic pay is revised time to time in the government. In the government of India, the revision is every 10 years and sometimes even more it is. Whereas in state governments, it is every 5 years. But some states have gone for revision they do not state governments, some state governments establish pay revision, appoint pay revision commissioner or appoint a pay commission. So, they will study all the conditions. These pay commissions do a lot of exercise and finally recommend some scales. We will come back to that under pay commissions discussion. So, basic pay is the thing that is fixed once for 5 years or 10 years unless pay revision is done. But in the pay, what gets added is annual grade increments. Every year one increment is added, and in some cases there may be extra increments also. Some time ago, some 30-40 years back, to promote family planning, government employees who underwent tubectomy or vasectomy, they were if they were stopping with 2 children, they were given 2 increments. After 3 children, it was 1 increment, like that. So, such increments were given. Out of the turn increments are also there. So, along with basic pay. Basic pay plus these increments together form the basis for calculation of all other amounts. The next important category is allowances. Allowances are the money that are allowed for the employee. There are various kinds of allowance. The most important is DA. The full form is dearness allowance. Dearness allowance means the salary is judged at some point of time, and that salary remains with some minor increments that will be there for 5 years or 10 years. But in 5 years, there are so many things that are changing. Most importantly, inflation. In most of the developing countries, including India, there is a high degree of inflation, whereas in advanced countries, inflation rate is very low. In America, for a very long time, in Britain and some of the advanced countries, the price rise was not so much. At least 2 points of time I visited US with a difference of 5 years, the petrol was the same, the gas they call it, or other things were the same. There was not much difference in that over 5 years, but here in a country like India, there can be lot of difference. So, dearness means anything becomes dear when the price goes up. So, it is another name for price rise. To offset price rise, the government sanctions DA. If you take the example of state government of Telangana, every 6 months there is a DA that is announced by the government. So, this is to compensate for rise in cost of living. The cost of living is going up. Because of rise in cost of living, you have to offset that, otherwise the employee's economic condition might deteriorate. So, this is DA, and to originally employees some decades back, they did not have any such thing. Slowly all these things got added. After that, another thing that has been added is HRA, house rent allowance. In rural areas, houses were cheap. In fact, normally government jobs are all located in the cities. So, in cities housing is expensive. So, to offset the cost, otherwise employees salary, much of it goes for house rent and other things. To offset that, government started giving house rent allowance. And this is house rent allowance also varies from city to city. Bigger the city, there is more of house rent allowance. The lower the city, lesser the level of urbanization, the house rent allowance is less. In addition to this, there is city compensator allowance. In big cities, life is far more expensive, therefore, to offset that, that is given. In some cases, BLAD climate allowance is also given. In colliery areas, in coal mine areas, there is a lot of dust and lot of scope for ill health and lot of health issues. To offset that, some bad climate allowance is given. And even military, we have this in forward front areas which are extremely cold. The soldiers in some of the areas, I think if a soldier is kept there for more than a month, there is a chance he will have serious health problems, he may even die. So, therefore, to encourage people to go and work in such situations, the government gives more money. This is what is known as bad climate allowance. Extra increments for acquiring qualifications is also given. Children's educational allowance is given, vehicle allowance is given. So, like this there are various kinds of allowances that are given. The rate of allowance depends on the basic pay. You have higher the basic pay, more it is. One more such thing is the DA, that is daily allowance. Dearness allowance is different from daily allowance. If an employee goes on some work for that day to meet his expenditure, a DA is allowed, DA is paid. And there is another allowance is TA, travelling allowance. In some positions where travelling is too much, regularly they have to travel, there is a FTA, fixed travelling allowance. So, per month you get some 10,000 or 5,000 whatever, that is to take care of the travelling, or otherwise on a point to point basis, day to day basis it is given. There is one more allowance that is known as a deputation allowance. For temporary requirements, employees are shifted from one office to another, one department to another, to help out because there is a rush of work there. So, therefore, somebody who is not having much of work here is deputed for time being. There is also deputation allowance. Like this, we have so many other kinds of allowances. The third component of pay is the benefits that are given to the employees. The benefits are things like leave entitlements. Employees get government employees get various kinds of leaves. One is casual leave. Casual leave is a leave that anybody can apply without casualty, some emergency situation, suddenly you have to do it, so you can do it. There are medical leaves. In academic teaching organizations, there are academic leaves. So, these are all leaves and these leaves are regulated, and leave register is maintained. An employee will have to apply them, and then the quota is exhausted. After that, leave is not given. And there is also a peculiar category of leave known as leave not due for some extreme circumstances. This is also a category of leave, and if the leave is there are some leaves, there is a category of leave known as earned leave. So, earned leave is given to non-vacation staff in teaching organizations, and there is a basis, maybe 1 for 11 or some such basis. So, these leaves are extra. Vacation employees in the same organization, some people enjoy vacation, some 42 mandatory days of vacation for teaching staff, non-teaching staff do not have. So, therefore, they have earned leave, and earned leave is also there for other government employees at the rate of maybe some 3 or 4 years, 4 days per year. So, these leaves can be accumulated and they can be encashed. Most of the people encash them after their service is over, so that much of income tax need not be paid, or it may be useful for resettlement at the time of retirement. Other benefits include PF, Provident Fund. Provident Fund is a fund, Provident comes from providing for future. So, this is a fund to provide for the future of the employee. There are two social security schemes in the organizations. One is known as PF, the other one is known as pension. Some cases if pension is given, PF is not given. So, pension is after you superannuate, you work for 60 till 60th year or maybe 58, whatever is the age of superannuation, you are given pension. Pension is a benefit, and pension is to nowadays the courts have given judgments that government cannot deny pension to the employee. They cannot cut amounts from pension, because courts have ruled that pension is a deferred pay. So, some money which was to be paid to the employee while he was in service is not paid, that is saved for future to help the employee to settle after retirement when there is no income. So, to ensure that he survives, he lives having worked for the government honorably, meeting all the requirements, pension is given. So, if pension is given, PF is not there. PF is a system where the government and the individual salary, they cut 1 month salary per 1 year, and government also matches, organization also matches 1 month. This amount goes into pension fund, it accumulates interest, and this amount is given to the employee after retirement, depending on the requirements, maybe house building or children's marriage, all such things. While in service also one can use. So, this is to provide for unforeseen contingencies. There is another kind of benefit known as contributory provident fund. So, you can contribute to that provident fund without the mandatory is one where matching contribution is made. Contributory is just you pay, you can open a PF account and pay that. So, people do it to save income tax and also save on income tax, and also to have some money at reserve for future needs like children's education, resettlement or unforeseen expenditures or medical issues and all that. So, these are various kinds of benefits that are given to employees. Employees join organizations not only for the pay and allowances, they also join the organizations for these benefits are also. Some of these benefits are so very substantial that these days the pension amounts are very high, and now government has stopped pension maybe a decade back or 1.5 decade back, slightly more perhaps. Now, this pension system is closed in the government organizations. Now, there is a contributory pension scheme started by the central government, according to which for getting pension you have to contribute some money. So, old timers did not have to contribute. So, government paid everything and they are getting decent sums. Now, this has become a very big burden for the government, and in some cases the government is spending more than half of the budget on more than half of the money on pensioners, and the amount paid to pensioners is equal to the amount paid to serving employees. So, the government wants to stop this. Some changes are there. The last component we are talking about is the perks, which is short formed as perks, PERKS, or perquisites. This full form is perquisites. Perquisites are benefits, kind of benefits given to higher level executives, maybe the vice chancellor, the directors, IAS officers, the class 1 officers. They have so many facilities given to them, partly to treat them in a proper way, enjoying high status positions, to match their dignity and all that. So, the perks might include a house or a furnished house, a rent free house, or maybe a car, chauffeur driven car, a driver is also given free, a mali is there, a cook is there. So, all these things are extra benefits for the employees. So, these are known as perks. So, perks are in addition. There are thus 4 components of pay: basic pay, the first, second is the allowances, third is the benefits, and fourth is the perks. So, together is nowadays known as total compensation. This is a new word. I think in one of the next lectures we will get to know about this. So, now to understand what is these days people are using the word TCC, total compensation to the company. So, there are so many things, but people ask what is the TCC. So, that will tell you what exactly is going from the organization to the individual. That word is not used in the public sector, but in private sector they are using. Now, we come to next important aspect, namely the principles on which the pay should be decided. Why some people get high, why some people get low. After all, what is the basis for fixing a particular pay? You say 10,000 or 20,000, 50,000. Is it just arbitrarily given? Is there any basis? This is what the point of discussion is. There are three principles of pay. One is called the external parity, the first. Second is called internal parity. The third is called individual worth. So, what these principles mean is, when you are giving pay to one IAS officer or class 1 officer, class 3 or 2, group 1 or 2, whatever is the officer. So, you have three considerations in deciding how much of pay allowances a person should get. So, one is known as external parity. External parity means what people of this cadre are getting outside. Say for example, I am a lecturer. So, my lecturer salary in government should be something related to lecturer salary in private sector. The comparison comes. Or maybe this is a class 1 position, a class 1 officer is getting that much, therefore, you should also get it. So, this is known as market driven pay. So, the market conditions are taken into consideration, the outside conditions become the chief criteria to fix the salary. So, this is known as external parity. There should be some comparison parity between what others are getting, your employee should get. This is external parity. Now, the second principle is the principle of internal parity. Now, within the organization, somebody is getting 1 lakh, somebody is getting 2 lakhs. If they are of the same qualifications, if the nature of work is almost the same, this is unwarranted. So, he should also either one fellow should be paid 2 lakhs or the other fellow should be brought down to 1 lakh. So, this is one more consideration. So, comparison with outside factors, comparison with the inside factors. This is the second principle. The third principle is individual worth. It is not only what is the person's capability. The person is an extraordinary person, I think it deserves more. Extraordinarily qualified, extraordinary individual, you give something more to that. So, there are three important bases on which pay is determined, allowances are determined, and these are known as the principles of pay. One is known as the principle of external parity, second is known as the principle of internal parity, and the third is known as the principle of individual worth. So, the next part of the lecture is about pay commissions. As I have mentioned in the beginning, the pay and allowances of government employees are not arbitrarily decided. They are not given just like that. There is a proper basis, and the basis is the recommendations of the pay commissions. The government of India has been appointing pay commissions from starting from 1947, almost some 10 years once. So far 7 pay commissions have been appointed: 1947, 57, 70, 83, 94, 2006 and 2013. 8th pay commission is due. It is not exactly 10 years, it was expected to be 10 years, but sometimes it is taking more. Once it was slightly less than 10 years, sometime it took 13 years, 14 years. The idea behind pay commissions is that paying salary should be done very judiciously. It is not that anybody can make recommendations about it. So, therefore, these pay commissions have always been headed by a judge, the Supreme Court judges, because these are the people who know how to do things very judiciously. The judges have been the chairman of the pay commissions, and the pay commissions are multi-member commissions. often experts are added to the pay commissions. They recommend the central, there are central pay commissions and state level pay commissions. These pay commissions are ad hoc bodies, ad hoc in the sense they are appointed. Once they submit their report, their job is over. So, these are all people, the pay commission members are either sitting judges or sitting experts working in government, or they are people who are retired. So, once the job is done, they go away. It is for the government to accept or not accept. So, sometimes the government accepts, sometimes the government does not accept, sometimes government accepts certain things, government does not accept certain things. Usually, government tries to save on and just bargain with employees to cut something here or there. Rarely there are occasions where the government gives more than that. In fact, that has happened. I think in Telangana it has happened when the CM said they, after a protracted struggle and all that, yes, they were asking for something. He was very obstinate for very long, and finally he said, okay, I will give you little more. So, this also may be some extreme generosity at some point of time, but generally they are within the recommendations of the pay commissions. Some states are appointing their own pay commissions, whereas some states they say that we go with the central government. So, whenever central pay commission is appointed, it automatically applies to various states also. Now, the pay commissions not only recommend for government employees, the pay commissions also recommend for defense forces, armed forces. Pay commissions also recommend for the retired employees also. So, retired employees pensions are also revised depending on the pay commission recommendations. Pay allowances and perquisites, benefits, etc., are very important from the point of view of an employee. An employee joins an organization largely on the basis of the pay that it gets immediately, and what are the opportunities of getting money from the organization in the long term future. Even after retirement, what kind of benefits are there. So, these things attract employees to jobs, and pay allowances are very attractive. It is likely that we get better people because the jobs become more competitive and the government can select better off people. And therefore, pay has been playing a very important role in human resource management. Payment has a long history. In the days of feudalism, in ancient and medieval period, there was no salary that was paid to employees. It was mostly in terms of some privileges that the employees, the royal employees were getting. Under Mughal system or under feudalism, the fellow will be entitled to collect taxes in some certain areas, in return for which he will be serving the king or the sultan or the nawab. So, this was the kind of system, but later the cash payment started coming in. Max Weber, who is a famous sociologist, says that the salaries beginning is traced to the money economy. So, a transition from barter economy to money economy has made pay principles, pay components, all this discussion much relevant. Pay is also known as salary, wages. Wages are paid to workers, mostly manual workers, blue collared workers. Salary is given to executive. This is one important distinction that is made, but avoiding all such distinctions, the modern word that is now being used is compensation. Compensation is very meaningful term. Compensation is it keeps the employee and employer on a equal footing. There are 4 components of pay: basic pay, allowances, benefits and perquisites, and there are 3 principles of pay: the principle of external parity, the principle of internal parity, the principle of individual worth. In combination, these 3 things, it is not that only one of them works to determine the pay, all the 3 are used, and there are also pay commissions and wage boards also. In case of various categories of employees, government appoints journalists. There is a wage board for journalists. There is a wage board for cement workers. There is a wage board for coal mine workers. So, in addition to government employees, strict government employees, there are also wage boards that are appointed, and so far 7 central government pay commissions have been appointed. They have been recommending increased salaries, allowances and all that. Now, just to conclude the discussion, the salaries of employees have been enormously going. I can just give one example. A lecturer in 1974, I remember vividly, the salary was something like 500 total salary. Now, the salary now to a lecturer comes to, I guess it is about 1.5 lakhs. So, there is a big increase, and even if you make room for inflation and all that, still the increase is very hefty. But unfortunately, there is a slackening, there is a fall in the performance standards of the government employees. Now, there are sometimes the government employees ask the government or the employer, you pay us, we will extract work from us. But unfortunately, this is not proving right. More the salary is not necessarily matched by more hard work or sincere work from the employees. Of course, there are also pay anomalies. There are cases where people are not given promotion and such issues are there. So, government is a huge organization, there are bound to be some anomalies, and there are lots of, one more thing that needs to be mentioned while closing the discussion is that there are number of laws also relating to payment. There is Minimum Wages Act. The government cannot pay less than a particular amount to an employee. It's a crime. The government cannot do that. So, there is a regulation regarding minimum payment, and there is also regulation regarding payment dates also. There is an act known as Payment of Wages Act, according to which you have to pay. If it is a small organization, you can pay before 5th. If it is a large organization, before 10th. Such mandatory things are there. There is a Payment of Bonus Act, there is a Gratuity Act. Like this, there are so many acts which try to help the employees to have their benefits, but now the government is thinking of consolidating. Government of India has already consolidated a law, a bill is passed, but it has not come into effect. Now, soon we are going to have labor codes instead of labor laws. The labor laws were little more helpful to employees. Now, the government wants to create a situation where private sector will have it easy. The foreign capital will come invest here, so that we will have economic development and job generation. That is what the government is thinking. Under that thinking, some of these acts which are really lot helpful to employees are now being modified, and what comes in their place is codes. Codes are not they are compulsive, they are not compulsive. If there is a violation, you cannot perhaps go to court of law, whereas a law is violated, you go to court of law. Such changes are coming up, and just let me wind up on the note that the government employees need to work more efficiently, more dedicatedly to deserve all the increased pay. The last thing I would like to mention is that there was a big gulf between highest pay and lowest pay in the past. Now, that is progressively bridged. This is towards a socialistic momentum, that the salary of the highest ICS officer and lowest peon was 100 times so different, but now that difference is marginalized. I think highest and lowest, it is some 20 times. I am not exact, but this is getting bridged now. This is a welcome thing. After all, lowest people also have their requirements. These were days of colonial rule. They could afford to do that, but now we are living in a democracy. There should be, as I mentioned, there are principles of parity also. So, maybe that IAS officer is working more, but he is not working 48 hours a day. So, only 24 hours he is working. Therefore, there should be some comparison that has come. This is a progressive thing that has happened. So, thank you for viewing this video lecture. Thank you.